إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Brothers and sisters, we live in an extremely fast-paced world. A world that's all about the hustle. A world that's about amassing more wealth, gaining more, achieving more. But have we ever taken a moment to just pause and think? Think about all of the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. You know, if someone comes to us right now and asks us, mention 3 or 4 or 5 blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, would we be able to answer that question? What would our answer be? What would our blessings that we mentioned be? I want to share with you a narration in Sahih Muslim about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in every single part of this narration, we can gain so many lessons. The story starts with the Prophet ﷺ leaving his house at an odd time of the day. Most scholars say it was at night. This was a time that the Prophet ﷺ reserved for his family. He wouldn't let anything interfere with that. He had a set time for everything. But on this day, the Prophet ﷺ went outside of his house. And as he was walking the streets of Medina near the masjid, he found his great companions, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Umar radiallahu anhu. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he's a bit surprised. He looks at them and he says, "What are you guys doing here at this time of the day? I'm not used to seeing you here. It's weird. It's an odd time of day for you guys to also be here." And normally when we hear these 3 people's name together, the story goes something like this. The Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma went together and they prayed salah. Or the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr and Umar went together and they helped people. They helped orphans. They took care of the Muslims. That's normally how a story starts with these 3 people. But this story is much different. So the Prophet ﷺ, he walks out and he sees them and he says, "What are you guys doing here?" And they tell him, "أَخْرَجَنَا الْجُوعُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ." Hunger made us leave our houses. We figured maybe we can walk in the streets, find something to eat. We figured we might find a food source somewhere. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he looks at them and he says, "Well, that makes 3 of us. I also left my house because I was hungry. I also figured, I might find some food source here." And this point in itself is an important point. The Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma, the 3 most important people in Muslim history, 3 of the most beloved people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 3 of the most beloved people to the people of Medina. They were walking the streets of Medina because they were hungry. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he looks at them and says, "You know what? Instead of sitting around, let's actually go and look for some food. Food isn't just going to come to us. We actually have to go and strive and try to earn food." So they begin walking and they go to a companion who had a lot of wealth. And they knock on his door. So he knocks once, the Prophet ﷺ knocks once, he says, "Assalamu alaikum." Nobody responds. Then he knocks another time, "Assalamu alaikum." No response. And finally, a third time, Assalamu alaikum, and still no response. And out of respect, we know what happens after you ask for permission 3 times. You're supposed to leave. So the Prophet ﷺ, even though he was extremely hungry, I mean, can you imagine someone leaving his house to try to look for food? And that person being the Prophet ﷺ. It means it was extreme circumstances. So he begins to walk away from the house with Abu Bakr and Umar. And at that point, the wife of the Ansari, she opens the door and she says, wait a second. Don't leave, I'm here. I actually heard every single time you knocked on my door. But the reason I didn't open the door was because I wanted to hear you give us salam more and more. I wanted to gain more of your blessing, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And if this was us, I know I'm speaking for myself, I'd be furious, like, come on, don't you know I'm starving? Why are you opening the door? What's taking you so long? But the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says one thing. He says, khayr, don't worry about it. It's all good. And so he says, so where exactly is your husband? And she says, he went to fill up some water from the wells and he'll be here shortly. So they waited for him. And her husband begins to approach, and as he sees in the distance, he sees the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sees Abu Bakr, and he sees Umar, and his face begins to radiate. He begins to smile. And he says, Alhamdulillah, nobody will have more noble guests today than I will. Can you imagine opening the door and seeing the Prophet ﷺ in front of you? That in itself is sufficient. But then imagine having the Prophet ﷺ and Umar ibn al-Khattab and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. That's something we can only dream of. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make that dream a reality for us on the Day of Judgment in Jannah, inshaAllah. And so the Sahabi, he realizes that the Prophet ﷺ and his companions are hungry. So he tells them, wait a second, I'll go get the best sheep I have and slaughter it for you right now. So he goes and he gets his sheep, and as he's about to slaughter it, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, wait, hold on. Don't slaughter that sheep. That's your best sheep. Save that one for yourself. Save the money maker for yourself. Just give me a normal sheep. I'm fine with just anything normal. I don't want anything special. And today, in our times, the leaders of the Muslim Ummah, they'll only use the bathroom if the toilet seat is covered in gold. SubhanAllah. So he goes and he gets another sheep and he slaughters it. And he puts it on the table. And along with it, he just puts some basic things, some water, some milk, and some dates. And so the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr and Umar, they begin to eat until they're full. And it's not often that these people are full. It's not often that they eat meat. It's not often that they live this luxurious lifestyle, if we can even call it that. There's a narration in Sunan al-Tirmidhi where there was a specific time where the companions couldn't find any food. And it got so bad to the point that they had to tie rocks to their stomachs. And so at one point it got really bad, and some of the companions, they were talking amongst themselves and they said, maybe we can go speak to the Prophet ﷺ. Maybe we can show him these rocks on our stomach. If he sees that, maybe he'll make dua and Allah will surely accept his dua and grant him food. So they say, that's a great plan. Let's go and talk to the Prophet ﷺ. So they go to him and they show the Prophet ﷺ, we're super hungry, we're starving. And they pull up their shirt to show him that they had a rock tied to their stomach. And at that point, the Prophet ﷺ, he pulls up his shirt and he had 2 rocks tied to his stomach. That's the Prophet ﷺ. And the companions, they began to cry. Even you, O Prophet of Allah, you're going through a more severe hardship than we are. We have another narration where Sayyidah Aisha, she says, there came a 3-month period where in the house We didn't have any fire lit for 3 months. This doesn't mean that they had chicken instead of beef or fish. No, they could cook nothing for 3 months. And all they ate was the aswadan, at-tamr wal-ma, dates and water. That's all the Prophet ﷺ had for these 3 months. So after they ate to their fill, the Prophet ﷺ, he looks at them. He looks at Abu Bakr and Umar, and he says something so powerful. He looks at them and he says, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ عَنْ هَذَا النَّعِيمِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. By the one whom my life is in his hand, you will be asked about every single one of these blessings. You will be asked about that meat that you just ate, about that milk that you just drank. And then he continues and he says, أَخْرَجَكُم مِّن بُيُوتِكُمُ الْجُوعِ. Hunger made you leave your house. ثُمَّ لَمْ تَرْجِعُوا حَتَّى أَصَابَكُمْ هَذَا النَّعِيمِ. And then you didn't return back to your house until you were full, until you were satisfied. And it's not like they had a table spread, like I mentioned. It's not like they had, 3 different types of rice, 5 different types of meat, 3 types of salad, 20 types of dessert, like we often have during Ramadan. No, it was what we view as basic. Maybe not even that for us. Just meat, dates, and some water. And so the Prophet ﷺ, even at this moment, at their weakest moment, he's telling them, remember where this blessing is coming from. This is all coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this. And so this story, these incidents, they bring me to the main point of my khutbah. And that is, we need to start counting our blessings. We need to be thankful for every single blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us. And this concept of being thankful is reiterated in so many ahadith. And it's even in the Quran, in a surah that many of us probably recite daily. Surah Al-Takathur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ. Then you will be asked on that day about the blessings, the bounties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. And if you look at the word, لَتُسْأَلُنَّ, the lam here is for emphasis. And the noon at the end of the word is also for emphasis. So what this is really saying is, you will definitely be asked about every single blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. And so when the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they heard about this, they were a little bit confused because, like I mentioned, it's not like they were living high lifestyles. They weren't living anything luxurious. So they look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they tell him, what na'im are you talking about, Ya Rasulullah? Half of our food is just bread. It's just basic food. Is that the blessing you're talking about? Like, where is this blessing? And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, don't you have shoes on your feet? Aren't you able to drink cold water on a hot day? That is the blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you about. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's trying to magnify these small blessings that we so often just gloss over, that we so often don't even realize that they're blessings. Just the journey to the masjid today, how many blessings did we use? Let's go through it. So first, we woke up. Blessing number 1, we were able to wake up. We woke up with a roof over our heads. Blessing number 2. We were able to walk to the bathroom. Blessing number 3. We took a shower. Blessing number 4. And maybe we put our hand in the shower to check if the water was cold, and of course it was cold. So we put the hot water on. Blessing number 5. And then after that, we changed our clothes to a different pair of clothes. Blessing number 6. And then we jumped in the car and we drove. We had a car. Blessing number 7. While we were driving, we were able to see the road. Blessing number 8. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to come to the masjid and fulfill our obligation. Blessing number 9. And now we're all here listening to this khutbah. Blessing number 10. And I'm not saying that my khutbah is a blessing by any means. I'm saying the fact that we're able to listen is the blessing. So just 10 blessings in just, 10, 15, 20 minutes? And we have so many more blessings that I can't even count. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. And if you were to try to enumerate the number of blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, you wouldn't be able to count it. Let alone thank Allah for it. Let alone thank Allah properly for it. You wouldn't even be able to count the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And so again, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's reminding them, this cold water is a blessing. This most basic thing that everybody takes for granted, that's a blessing. And now we're able to see this more. Because when we look at Africa, the people in Africa, so many of them don't even know what clean water is. They probably don't even know what color the water is supposed to be. Even if we don't look at Africa, look at Flint, Michigan. They haven't had clean water in years. So we need to begin to realize that this clean water isn't even a guarantee. And this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I want to share with you a beautiful story to illustrate this. This happened in the early Khilafah, in the early Caliphate of the Muslim Ummah. The Khalifa was Harun al-Rashid. And there was a person by the name of Ibn Sammak who came to him, who was his advisor. He walked to him and he had a small cup of water with him. And so Harun al-Rashid, the Khalifa, he asks him, he tells him, can you give me some advice? And this, of course, was back when Muslim leaders would accept advice. When Muslim leaders would try to improve themselves. So he says, can you give me some advice? And Ibn Sammak says, of course. If you were in a hot desert, and you had no way to get back home, and all your food, all your water ran out, and I told you that I'll give you this cup of water for half your kingdom. And at this time, brothers and sisters, the kingdom of the Muslims was so massive. It was so big that it was said that the sun would never set on the kingdom of the Muslims. And that was before the British took that. But Harun al-Rashid, he would look at the clouds and he would see that they were rain clouds. And he would say, go wherever you want, because wherever you go, that rain is going to hit part of the Muslim Ummah. That's how big the Muslim kingdom was. So he tells him, would you give up half of your kingdom for this cup of water? And Harun al-Rashid says, not only would I give half my kingdom up, I would give my entire kingdom up. Because if I'm not able to drink water, I'll die. And if I die, there's really no point of having a kingdom. And he tells him, very well. Let me give you another scenario. Let's say I gave you this cup of water right now. And you drank this cup of water. But you weren't able to get rid of that waste. You had some kind of severe urinary retention. You weren't able to get rid of that water. And then someone comes to you and tells you, I can try and help fix this, but I want half of your kingdom. Would you give up half of your kingdom? And again, Harun al-Rashid, he says, I'll give up my full kingdom. I don't want to be living in pain and agony. That wouldn't be a life that I want to live. So Ibn Sammak tells him something very powerful. He says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, your kingdom isn't even worth one drop of water or one drop of urine. Your entire kingdom, you were willing to give your kingdom 2 times over just for a cup of water. And subhanAllah, how many of us think that water is a blessing? How many of us think that not just having a bathroom, but being able to use the bathroom is a blessing? We so often don't realize this. And while we have so many blessings to appreciate, the most important blessing, and the one that often goes unrecognized, is the blessing of Islam. The fact that we're Muslim, the fact that we're able to pray, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose us to be Muslim and carry this message. You know, usually when we pray or we do something good, we feel good about it. And that's great. We should feel good about it. But we always feel like we did this for Allah. You know, I'm a good person. I'm doing it for Allah. But we always forget that it was through the tawfiq of Allah, through the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we were able to accomplish this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who chose you to go and to read extra Quran, to go and pray more. If it wasn't His choice, we would have done nothing. And a beautiful phrase that the Salaf, the predecessors, used to say was, رَزَقَنِ اللَّهُ مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ الْبَارِحَةِ كَذَا وَكَذَا. Yesterday, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me, and look at the word razaqani. He blessed me with the opportunity to be able to pray such and such many rak'ahs of salah. Because when you look at it, more than 80% of people don't have this blessing. And even if you look among the population that does have that blessing, many of them are beginning to doubt and even leave Islam. So it's a blessing in itself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't tested us with this. And so now hopefully we're all more aware of our blessings, the ones that may have gone over our heads. And now we may be thinking to ourselves, SubhanAllah, I'm such a blessed person. Why is it that I never recognized this before? What happened? Why is it that I'm now, after 10, 20, 30, 40 years, just now realizing that I'm really blessed? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the answer to that in the same surah. When you look at the first ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرُ. The reason you weren't aware of His blessings was because you were too busy competing for this world. Rivalry, competing to who can have more wealth, who can have more cars, who can look more beautiful, to the point that you forgot to look at what you actually do have. And it's become so prevalent to the point that Muslim countries are competing as to who can have the highest towers. Even though everybody knows that this is a sign of the Day of Judgment, but they don't care. As long as we have the highest towers, whatever happens, happens. We just want to die knowing that we accomplished the most in this world. Brothers and sisters, this world wasn't created purely for fun and entertainment. Of course, there is a time for that. But the purpose of this world isn't for that. That's why Jannah was created. And this is evidenced in the story of Umar ibn Khattab walking in on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had just woken up. And Umar ibn Khattab begins to look around. And all he observes is just a small cup that had some food in it and some animal skin hanging from the wall. And then he looks at the bed of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he realizes that the bed is a straw mat. And his pillow is made of animal skin with palm fibers in it. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was wearing an izar, just a waistcloth to cover his lower body. And so Umar ibn Khattab saw the marks of that straw mat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's back, and he begins to cry. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he wakes up and he's like, surely I couldn't have done anything wrong. Like, why are you crying? I just woke up. What happened? And Umar ibn Khattab, he says, I'm crying because I remember what the kings of Persia, the kings of Rome have. And I look at what you have. And you're the most blessed person. You're the one who Allah loves the most, and yet you don't have anything in this world. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he gets up and he shakes him, and he tells him, Ya ibn al-Khattab, ألا ترضى أن تكون لنا الآخرة ولهم الدنيا? Are you not okay with them having this world while we have the hereafter? And Umar ibn Khattab, he says, you are right, O Messenger of Allah. Bala. And so our problem is that we think that the more dunya someone has, the more blessed someone is. We often forget that the more we have, the more accountable we will be. Having more blessings in itself isn't something good or bad, but it's about how we use these blessings. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. So the question now is, how can we ensure that we're using our blessings for a good thing? How can we ensure that these blessings won't testify against us on the day of judgment? And so the first step is recognizing our blessings. We need to be more aware of our blessings. And one thing I would recommend for this is having a small gratitude journal. And this is something that's recommended by psychologists, by non-Muslims, by everybody. The reason is when you write in that gratitude journal, you begin to realize how blessed you are. You begin to have a more positive outlook on life. And it's a very simple thing, just 3-4 minutes before you go to sleep, you open this journal and you write one or two things you were blessed with. And for myself personally, whenever I'm facing a hardship, I pull out my gratitude journal and I begin to look through it. Just the other day, I was looking through that journal and I noticed it put a smile on my face. I was looking at it and I wrote, Alhamdulillah, that the waiter today gave me 5 chicken strips instead of 4. Another one was, Alhamdulillah, because I ate the most delicious figs that I have ever eaten. So it's something so simple, but you really recognize how truly blessed you are. And the second step is, after recognizing these blessings, we need to use these blessings for good rather than evil. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with money, then enjoy that money. Use that money. Spend some of that money. But also use some of it as a donation for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us food, then enjoy that meal. Eat with your family. But then also go and ask those who don't have food to come and join you for a nice hot meal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with eyesight. We should use that eyesight for good, for reading Quran, for earning a halal income for our family, not for looking at inappropriate things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with the greatest blessing, the blessing of Islam. So we should be proud of it. We shouldn't be ashamed of wearing the hijab in public or wearing the kufi in public. We should be proud and happy. And most importantly, we always need to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you say Alhamdulillah, think that you could be rummaging through a trash can looking for some food to survive. When you say Alhamdulillah, think that you could have been in a hospital eating through a feeding tube. When you say Alhamdulillah, remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who made you Muslim. Because otherwise, on a day when it mattered most, you might have had nothing to show for it. And ultimately, know that every single one of these blessings will one day fade away. As the famous poet Labid says, أَلَا كُلُّ شَيْءٍ مَا خَلَى اللَّهَ بَاطِلُ وَكُلُّ نَعِيمٍ لَا مَحَالَةَ زَائِلُ. Indeed, every single one of our blessings will one day fade away, except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's always going to remain. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us about these blessings. So are we prepared to answer? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among the people who reflect over their blessings and are thankful. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ رَبَّنَا أَوْزِعْنَا أَن نَّشْكُرَ نِعْمَتَكَ الَّتِي أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْنَا وَعَلَى وَالِدِينَا وَأَن نَّعْمَلَ صَالِحًا تَرْضَاهُ وَأَدْخِلْنَا بِرَحْمَتِكَ فِي عِبَادِكَ الصَّالِحِينَ. Brothers and sisters, before I end, I've been requested to talk about something that's plaguing the country. And that is the issue of coronavirus. I know everybody here has probably heard their fill of it, but it's something good to repeat. And I'm not going to speak about it from a medical sense because I'm not a doctor at all. But what I will say is, if you're showing symptoms of a flu, or you think maybe you have the coronavirus, you should definitely first of all get it checked out. And during that time, it's okay for you to not come to the masjid. Whether it's Jum'ah or anything else, if there is an issue, if you do feel sick, if you feel unhealthy, it is okay for you to miss it. And I know people who come here, it's because they know that this is part of worship. But sometimes it's better to avoid coming to Jum'ah if it means saving other people's lives. And these aren't my words. AMJA, the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America, actually issued a fatwa that says, if you're feeling sick, If you think you have the coronavirus, then for sure schedule an appointment with your doctor, but it's also okay for you to stay home. Actually, it's recommended for you to not come to Jum'ah so other people don't get sick. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us during this time of need. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help the sick and cure them, inshallah. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واشكروه يزدكم وأقم الصلاة